So I'm Nisha from Fleurish, and just want to give just a super brief kind of history of the Fleurish for those who don't know about our studio, which is on Capitol Hill. And we started 24 years ago in Madrona, which is not far from here. So Capitol Hill's been great for us, and we really love it. And thank you for having us. I love teaching. I have to say I'm a little bit nervous in this format because I'm so used to interacting with people, and this is so hollow in here. But I'm pretending that I see all of your faces. And normally when I do workshops, they're anywhere from private one-on-ones to groups of 15. So it's super interactive and fun. And I thought that a good thing to do today would be an autumnal centerpiece, since we're coming up on the holidays, and just give you some really, really basic tools to, on the fly, throw together something. If you're, well, I guess Thanksgiving is not going to be on the fly, but if you're hosting, just small group of people with family and you want to put something together, I hope that this is going to be really helpful. So first I want to tell you that the product that I got, this section over here, if you can see it, I harvested from my garden. So I don't know how many of you actually have gardens, but if you do, this is a great time of year because it's really transitional and all the leaves are changing. There are a lot of textural pods and grasses, and I even picked a few apples that were, the last that were on the tree. So I'll go through kind of using some of that stuff. The other product, which is over here, came from two different places. One is Northwest Wholesalers, which for those of you at the Design Center, you're right in the heart of my flower world. I drive by you every morning and I wave. So some of the stuff is from Northwest, and the other stuff is from the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, which is literally a block and a half away. And they procure all their product locally, and it's organic, and I really like to support the farmers. So product-wise, this is kind of a sampling of what's going to be, I'm going to pull from. And then as far as tools, since it's not a hands-on class, if any of you are taking notes, really there's not a lot that I use when I'm designing. Vessel, I'm going to do it in clear glass because I really want you to see where the stems land in the vessel. But for a Thanksgiving or a holiday centerpiece, I would probably use something that's opaque. All three of these came from, I believe, Floral Supply Syndicate, which is also down the street from the Design Center. I like to use opaque because then you don't see the water turning murky or if something's floating in the, in there, it's not going to be distracting. I'm kind of a stickler for super clean water. And then as far as tools, these are the ones I use every single day. They're actually from Japan, but there's a knockoff model that's actually available online, and the company's called ARS, A-R-S, and they're a needle nose pruner. And the spring on it is super, super light and gentle, and very sharp. So these are great for all types of flowers. The next tool is a Swiss Army knife. If, in a pinch you needed to use something, you could always use this if you didn't have clippers or pruners. And this gadget right here is called a rose stripper, also available at Floral Supply Syndicate. And I'll show you how to use those when I clean the roses. And lastly, a frog. This is a Japanese floral design tool, mainly used in Ikebana, but for the purpose of what I do sometimes, I find it really, really useful. So this is also available at Floral Supply Syndicate. So those are my main tools, but on a daily practice, it's really clippers, vessel, and super clean water. I don't use any product. I don't even put sugar. I don't throw a penny inside there to make the tulips, grow. No floral food. I like to change water as often as possible. So that's something too that will help your flowers last longer. because what happens is there's bacterial growth in the water if it's inside a room where it's warm and the temperature rises. So that's really important to remember. If any of you have a Lazy Susan at home, I don't know if you can see that. This is a great tool for beginners to place their vessel on. And as you're designing, you can just spin that around, which when I'm teaching, I always have these. And in fact, often what I'll do is I'll have a bucket, which if you all have a bucket at home, you can place the Lazy Susan on top and then your vessel. And the reason why this is really helpful is because when you're sitting at a dining table, for example, your sight line is actually, lower as you're sitting. So when you're designing, this is kind of more comparable to the height of what you would be seeing at a table. So I think that's something that's really handy to know and just think about. It's not imperative, but it's a great thing to utilize. For the sake of the demonstration, I'm not going to, because I'm just going to have it be down here. And then we're going to start by adding always cold, clean water. And if you're going to be giving away an arrangement to somebody, it's really good to keep in mind to keep that water level low. Because for transport, the last thing you want is things sloshing around and getting wet. You can always top off your vessel when you get to your destination. So that's something to also keep in mind. Very frequently, I'll do an arrangement and then I'll lift the entire thing out and change the water again because I like it to be as pristine as possible. So I'd say for today, probably just go to the halfway mark so you can see that. And I think we're just going to go for it. I was talking about an autumnal arrangement. I always start with greenery first. So I think I'm going to take cues from nature over here and grab, so for example, raspberry greens. If anybody hasn't cut back their raspberry, or if you have a friend who's growing it, awesome foliage. One of my favorites. I use it all summer. I didn't prepare or prep anything because I wanted you guys to see what goes into cleaning things and why most florists don't have really pretty hands or manicured fingernails. I don't wear gloves. I just strip everything off. There are no thorns on this, but they're little teeny ones, but I think my hands have calloused over the last, gosh, going on over 40 years of being in the industry. So you want to clean your stems, because what's really important is that you never want to have anything in the water. So I've seen on numerous occasions glass vessels with things put in there. They're arranged beautifully, but there's a ton of foliage inside. So that's something you want to always keep in mind, is that you just want clean stems. So I'm going to go and just start cutting. Now, this is always a question I get. How do you know where to cut something? And I think just from so many years of doing this, it's very intuitive for me. I'd say you'd rather, veer on the side of cutting, keeping it longer, because you can always make your stem shorter. But once you go too short, that's it. You're going to have to pull that out because it's not going to work. But you start by placing your foliage in the vase, and you always want it to hit the bottom. So if something is up here, I don't know if you can see that, it's really best if it hits the bottom, and you'll know because you'll feel it. Sometimes I'll cut a couple stems at once, but I do a little bit of a cross hatching, and I create sort of a kind of like a triangle. Some people, may opt for the asymmetry of an arrangement and do something that's a little bit longer. There's definitely a trend right now towards this farm to table kind of organic, uncalculated, unstructured, looser kind of feel. And I can really appreciate that. I do think that eventually we're going to, as fashion sort of repeats itself, the trend is going to go back to more compact, tighter arrangements, which was more of a signature style that I did when I first started. But it's nice to evolve. I'm constantly learning and taking classes from other people as well. So you've got that going. I think I'm going to do a little smoke bush. Also from the garden. So I just picked really tall shoots that were coming out. Again, strip it down. If you want to wear gloves, you can. Again, I don't, but focusing on the greenery. I like to work in odd numbers, so I often go for 3 of this and 3 of that. With greenery, don't have any, well, I don't have good boundaries when it comes to that because I just love foliage. But in terms of floral, I'm more of a less is more approach when I'm adding the floral, so that there's more impact and just kind of focus on groupings of floral. But for greenery, again, 3 pieces kind of just nested in there. You know, sometimes you'll put something in and the whole thing will just kind of decide to pop out and explode. But that's okay, just kind of do it again. You want to check your water level to make sure none of the foliage is in there. I'm also cutting at an angle. Maybe you've heard of that before. If you cut straight, it's okay. But when you put your flower in, it'll hit the bottom of the surface of the vase and not have as much water access. Whereas if you cut at a stem at an angle and you put the flower in, then the water has, the conduit is more open. So that's a nice thing to remember too. Okay, I'm gonna kind of spin around, but really it's, I'm doing this kind of as the front for you. So I'm designing backwards, so I'm imagining what it looks like from this angle. So a little bit of that. Next, I'm gonna do some sage. Does anybody have sage in their garden? Or rosemary? Just all things that are seasonal right now in the Northwest. Sage is really woody and can be very, I don't know, it can make your water dirty really quickly. But again, you can separate out the pieces. Have fun. If you have a garden, go out and pick stuff. It's just, it's the best. And if you don't, go to your friend's garden. So these, you're gonna wanna kind of look at everything. I'm always kind of just pulling back things that are not fresh anymore. Some of the leaves that have turned yellow or brown. I love the color on this. It's kind of turning a dusty, kind of amethyst and olive color. But you'll see there's, you know, stuff that needs to be removed. So strip that back. I'm gonna go for 5 on this one. Give it a little bit more volume. The goal is to create a base for your arrangement before you start putting in the floral. Grabbing all 5, giving them a cut at an angle, maybe a little bit more. And then I'm gonna, again, sort of work around and nest the sage in here. Add 1 more piece. Lately, there's been, again, a trend towards this organic feel and where things kind of come out on the sides. The arrangement sort of sinks in the middle a little bit so that the story that's being told is sort of nested down in here. I haven't quite adopted that stylistic flair, so my arrangements tend to be a little bit more lush and abundant than minimalist with just sort of a nested flower in there. Rosemary, again, easy to strip back on that. Smells so good. So I'll go ahead and just clean up 3 of these. Oh, that one just broke. All right, well, we'll have 2 pieces. And as I'm doing this, if you're wondering where all my debris is, I am the messiest floral designer. You can ask my husband, who he's my partner at work. He just thinks I create the biggest mess. So the floor gets covered with debris. It's like standing on a big chopped salad, and then it all gets swept up and put into the compost. So rosemary in there. I don't recommend that on your kitchen floor. If you can do your arrangement in a garage or something, then just, yeah, get messy. It's great. Okay, so I think, a little bit of scented geranium. This is amazing. It's lemon verbena scented. I chopped this just from a bush in our garden. So I'm just going to take a few pieces of this and fill it in. I love fragrance. So, you know, if we can still hang on to that before we transition into winter, it's so lovely. Okay, so I don't know, I'm wearing black, so I don't know if it's hard to see, but this is, I've created a nice base for the floral to go into. And we can always add more sort of trailing things afterwards, but that's sort of your kind of structure. If you're dining at a rectangular table, what's really fun is if you don't have a long vessel, is you can always add more limbs coming off the sides. I'll show you that later, but this is a good start. So now let's move to the first floral component, which I always use the largest flower. In this case, it's going to be hydrangea from the garden. People often ask, well, how do you know when to put what in your bouquet? And I find that if you work with the smaller elements first, they're going to get easily lost and swallowed up by, you know, a larger bloom that you may put in next. So hydrangea being quite abundant. So for example, I'm going to go for 3. Again, just actually cut these this morning. If there are any leaves that are brown or down lower, you just simply remove them with your hands. Sometimes I leave the top ones up here, but I think I'm going to take those off as well. I have this fantasy that one day I'm going to have a studio where I come in, and before I get to design, everything's been cleaned and processed, and, you know, just in beautiful clear glass vases. But for now, I still, along with Amir and our other coworker, we spent a greater part of our morning cleaning products. It's amazing how long it takes to get everything processed. So hydrangea, again, cutting at an angle. I don't know, what is that, like, so bad with dimensions, 5 inches or so. So you're going to take that, anchor 1, again, this triangle thought of like 1, 2, 3. I like the smoke bush kind of cuffing it at the base. Take your second one. I'm going to remove these leaves as well. Kind of go in down on the other side. I'm imagining the centerpiece is for a 60-inch round table. Oh, and I should mention height. Anytime I'm doing something that's going to be positioned at a table where people are dining, there's a great rule of thumb. I'm going to take this off the Lazy Susan. Place your centerpiece, your base, on the table. Take your elbow, kneel it, just rest it down, and then drop your wrist, okay? So this level of height is kind of standard in the industry back in the day when we had weddings, remember? Where you don't want it above that. So at that point, it won't obstruct the sight line across your dinner table, and there won't be any friend or relative who's upset because they can't see you. So that's just kind of a good thing to remember. I touch my flowers a lot more than I probably should. They're super resilient. I really like them. So I don't know, but better not to, because some of them can bruise, especially white flowers. So again, you've got your kind of your structure here with your large flower. I'm tempted because I picked this artichoke too, but I don't think I'm going to use it. I loved it. I think it could be really, really lovely in an arrangement that's maybe like all, I don't know, tone on tone ombre, sort of wheat tones and flax and oyster and toffee and caramel and cognac and chocolate tones. But for this arrangement, I'm going to go with more color. But if you have any of these are great. Okay, so let's move to the next flower, which probably in this case, I think it's going to be the rose. We have some still coming in the garden, but I had to get these at the wholesaler. My new favorite rose right now it's coming out of South America. The variety name is Toffee, and it's exactly what it looks like. It has no fragrance, but it opens so velvety and lasts for the longest time. So this is what happens when they come in. I did cut the height, but they're covered in thorns and foliage. Nothing to be intimidated by when you've got your handy dandy strippers. So this tool works for both right and left-handed people. You rest your index finger on this little lip here on one side, and you just gently place the rose in between the two bars, and then you give a nice glide, and voila. Sometimes it's not that easy because the thorns are so nasty and hard that I have to go through with a Swiss Army knife and actually cut the thorns off manually one by one. So when I lived in France, I used to, the flower shops are so amazing there, especially in Paris. I used to just spend as much time as I could in the stores, just kind of hanging out. I'd eventually buy like one thing, but I would watch these women in the back room, and they would all day long, all they did was remove thorns. They'd be sitting there and just all day long, just removing thorns. The reason why it's better than this is because these can actually scar the side of the stem. You know, for the sake of what we're doing, you know, it's really fine, but I think they just have their floral ethic is a little bit, I don't know, better than ours, just to preserve the integrity of the stem, and also when they're in a clear vase, you don't see this scarring on the side. So if you apply light pressure, sometimes the thorns will come off really easily. So I'll do this really quickly. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Gorgeous, gorgeous rose. So when I add floral, I like to group them. I also, I may mention just removing some of the guard petals if they look like they need to be. That's a good idea because sometimes they get a little bit moldy. But I like to nest groupings of 3. Okay, this is a good example. I didn't cut my stem short enough, so it's kind of, well, actually, yeah, I'm going to trim it a little. I like to group them. I think the impact of that clustering is just really beautiful for contrast between the different tones in the bouquet, especially against this raisiny chocolate brown. And you always want to keep in mind that your arrangement is going to be viewed from all angles if it's at a round table. So as you're spinning things around, your lens that you're looking through should have like the same just presence that's, you know, emanating beauty from all sides, whereas one side is just, you know, hasn't been left out. So I think I'm going to go for some other color. Sorry, I don't know the name of this rose, but it's also really lovely. It's kind of a coral. If the rose, unlike this one that's really open, if it's a little bit tighter, you can just gently blow on it, and sometimes they'll open up a little bit more, depending on how far they are in their life cycle. But these roses will easily look great even after a week. So again, quick little strip on those. And I should ask Jennifer, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type in. I can't read the screen, but she's going to read them to me if anybody has a question.
I think we're all good right now. We're just enjoying this gorgeous bouquet you're making, this arrangement that you're making. I'll let you know, though. I think maybe people are saving till the end. So
that's good. I'll keep an eye on time. We're almost done with the arrangement. So I'm going to do 3, 3, and 3. I'm going to nest another 3 on this other side, and I'll twist this around so you can see it in a moment. So let's say somebody's sitting over here, they're going to get a little pop of coral. This side will get the toffee. I'm reluctant to put the yellow in just because I'm liking this more dusty kind of palette, but you know what? It's the holidays. Let's do it. It's Thanksgiving. Give you a little bit of everything. I'm not afraid of color at all. I just I tend to not design with too many colors when I'm doing things. Kind of stay within a family of tones. But when I think of fall, I do think of all the changing leaves, and again, at an angle. So okay, so we've got our little rose story happening. And now the fun part comes in with some textural accents, which I love. So we've got everything from echinacea, which is coneflower. This time of year, all the petals have been either removed or fallen off. You've got this beautiful cone shaped textured pod. I also like very much the inside of scabiosa. Such an odd name, isn't it? But so this is the inside of the scabiosa flower, and it too is very molecular, but it has great texture. And so it's fun to just pop in a few of these. Again, I'm taking all 3. Don't be shy, you can do it, unless you want to spend hours doing a centerpiece. I just cut them all down at once. You can kind of stagger them as well, so that when you do that, they're not all the same. But just little punctuations of, and they can kind of go in deeper so that they're, you know, flowers can be mysterious sometimes, and you can look at a centerpiece and as you get closer, it can become a conversation piece and wondering like, what's in there? You know, what's that? So again, same with the 3 scabiosa pods. I think I'll just kind of counter this on the other side. See, I'm kneeling down because I want to see what it would look like at table height. I'm spying some leaves in the water, so I'm sticking my finger in there to get that out. I would definitely change the water on this one before it got placed or was sent out somewhere. Okay, so that's a little bit of texture. I want to talk about some grasses. And I don't have wheat in the studio today, but I did pick, there's so many grasses right now that are, you know, drying. There's like fountain grass. You probably, if you go on a walk, you'll see it in people's gardens. I don't even know the name of this, but this grass we have is super tall. It shoots out about like 5 feet tall. So I just trimmed some of those. And the other thing I got was the skeletons of Crocosmia, which are so beautiful. They've got, they're just kind of these pod-like, you know, the inside after the flower comes off. So I'd like to add a few of those and a few grasses. And I think we might be done with the exception of doing some trailing things to make this a little bit longer. But so on the grass, kind of just take a couple of them. And maybe, you know, even if the table is round, you can still have a few that kind of come out. This kind of gives a little bit of a harvest feel to this time of year. And then maybe, she'll read the questions, yeah. So this you can kind of just nest in there as well. Maybe it's asymmetrical and you just kind of have it coming off of one side and maybe a few. These are brown with a little bit of like a saffron tipping. So pretty. Okay, and then maybe I think I'll just do a little bit coming off the other. Oh, there's millet. I think this is millet. Another grass from the growers market. I mean, there's so many things right now that are just screaming harvest and fall, and certainly can have things kind of just organically coming off the edge. This was fennel that I picked, but I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I'd take a vote if you were here with me right now. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use it, but it smells so good. Okay, so see this piece of scented geranium? It's bugging me. So I'm gonna trim that out. Kind of like giving things a haircut. You can you can go back in and edit.
So Nisha, while you're working on that edit, I'm going to ask a couple questions. I'm going to have you answer a couple questions that people have asked. So I'm just going to go down the list here. One of them is, how long in advance can you prepare something like this and have it still looking and keeping the crisp look?
Well, you can do this days ahead. And if you know, if you wanted to do it, let's say 3 days before, because Thanksgiving, you don't want to be dealing with it certainly the day or the day before. If you made it on, you know, Monday or Tuesday and kept it somewhere really cool, like in a garage, as long as it doesn't drop below freezing, it'll be perfectly fine. And the only thing I would say is if you're doing a clear vessel with glass, that you're going to want to change the water. But this is a great moment to just kind of show you, like if you have an opaque container, you go in there and you just lift the whole thing out as you would to change the water anyway, but drop it into an opaque one, and then you don't have to worry about all the things floating in the water. Again, I would be mindful about the height. If your container is a little bit taller, just kind of go with that, you know, forearm with the wrist drop down, because this is max on height right here. Because if you're sitting, you still want to be able to see the person across from you and make eye contact and do all that. So, but you could do it easily 3 days before, and it's going to be great.
Does the foliage in the base that you made the base out of, is that more resilient than the flowers? Would you have to change the flowers out before you may have to change that out?
The foliage will definitely linger longer. Of these flowers that I use, everything should be great for a week. Anything that's kind of on the verge of drying, like, you know, the echinacea or the crocosmia or the grasses or this millet kind of thing, that's all going to dry and stay exactly the way it is. So you don't even have to change that out at all. Scented geranium, rosemary, sage, all of that is super long lasting. I was just thinking about, you know, like if you wanted to add any boards or little pumpkins or something like that, if you have a chopstick at home or a kebab stick or something, you just kind of stick it in the, you know, piece of produce and wedge that into your arrangement. You could always do that a day of so that you don't get fruit flies if you're using apples. But I thought it would be kind of lovely to, you know, also incorporate some of the produce in there to add that feel. But I would do that day of if you're poking it, again, just because of the fruit flies.
Okay, great. And then Angela would like to know, how do you wrap the inside of the vase with leaves, and is that still in style?
Oh, how do you wrap it with leaves?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a trend that I haven't done tea leaf wrapping for years. And when I opened Fleurish 24 years ago, it was one of the first things I started doing after I went through a phase of using curly willow. And I still have people to this day, clients of mine. I remember you were one of the first to do that, and I honestly don't remember if I saw it somewhere and you know, took that on. But I wish I had one, any kind of a big piece of foliage. But basically, you take your glass vessel, and the leaf is about this long. You cut the stem off, and you just place it, wrap it on the inside of the vase. You want to have the nice side of the leaf facing outward. And if it feels kind of stiff, that's okay. You just press it against the vase. And if the vase is too large and you need 2 leaves, then you just do a second one and overlap them. Oftentimes the width of that leaf is perfect for this type of vessel. But if it's too tall, then you take scissors and you just trim the top. It's a great way to, you know, again, if you don't have an opaque vessel, to mask all the debris in the water. And it's a super clean, modern look. I think I might start doing it again. Like I said, trends, you know, always repeat themselves, just like in fashion. So it's a great question.
We have a lot of people that want to know how do you change the water, basically, so without losing the form and losing you know, any design.
So okay, so as I just lifted this one out of there, what I do is sometimes it's a 2-person job. So Amir is, I mean, super hands-on when it's a larger bouquet, but I go to the top of the vase and I cuff, you know, I grab the entire arrangement and I lift it out. So clearly it's a 2-person job with regards to one person holding it and somebody else dumping out the water. And I also just want to add, when you put water in your vase and you're filling it from the center, be sure to wipe the inside of the vase, the top part that's, you know, has all kinds of splashes on it from the, you know, from filling it. Because again, there's nothing better than having like a super clean vase to look through where the water is equally as sparkling. So then what you do is when the vase comes back, you just drop it back in and you hang on tight until you get as far down as you can, and then you release it. And the key to that is if your stems are long enough when you did your design, which remember I said it's really important to get them down to the bottom. That way, when you lift it out and put it back down, you'll feel it when you've anchored and hit the bottom of the vase, and then you can gently release the tension of your hands and let it unfold. Things will kind of sort of shift, but again, I told you I like touching things. I mean, you can certainly, you know, just kind of zhuzh things around a little bit that feel like, you know, if there's some negative space or something, just go ahead and do that. Our lights are on a sensor, so a motion sensor, so. But that's also a really, really good question because I change water. I can't even countless times every day as I'm designing, just because.
And Nisha, is distilled water better than tap water? Does it make a difference?
You know, I've never done a test on that. So I just use sink water. And again, for me, it's more about it being really clean. We have filtered water at home. It would be interesting to do a little test to see if that, you know, would make a difference. But I think that it's more an issue of bacterial growth when you get the flowers into an environment where the temperature increases the warmth of the water. Certainly don't want to have flowers on a mantle when the fire is going, you know, this winter, or near a radiant heater thing, a wall heater. Sometimes people will put flowers on a windowsill because they look beautiful, but then there's heat radiating from below. So, and then candlelight, that's something really, really important to be mindful about, you know, especially on dining tables. We like to have that glow of warm, you know, ambient light, but anytime you have a votive close to your arrangement, and certainly if it's like underneath the foliage, forget about it. Your hydrangea is just gonna, you know, it's gonna turn brown, first of all. It's gonna kind of get fried, but everything else is gonna get compromised from the heat.
And then I think I have one more question on here. What about flower food? Is there a reason why you should or should not use it?
Oh, why you shouldn't use it? I'm a purist at heart, so that's just something that it's never been something that I've been attracted to. It feels counterintuitive to add chemicals to water. Mostly, you know, a lot of those ingredients are sugar, some form of a sugar base, which just helps sort of open up, you know, gets the water up to the flower, because it has to travel so far if you think about it. And especially with woody stemmed flowers, I will say that a really, really great thing to do with lilac, for example, or forsythia, is you can hammer it at the bottom, but you can also do something called bivalving, which is like, let's say this is your lilac stem. You take your wonderful sharp clippers and you just cut right up the stem. So I don't know where I learned the term bivalving. I never went to school to learn the floral trade. I just started when I was in high school, working in a shop. But this helps, you know, get the water up in faster, and as does hammering. But that feels so, I don't know, that feels aggressive. But it works. It really works, and that helps get things driving up to the actual floral. The other thing I'll mention too, especially with lilac, is you want to remove as much foliage as possible. So in the case of lilac, the leaves drink all the water first, and sometimes you wonder why the lilac like is just wilted after you've cut it. It could be the time of year that you've cut it, but most often it's because there's too much greenery on there. So
see, somebody had a question on a guideline of percentage flowers to foliage.
Oh, I would probably say 1/3 foliage to 2/3 floral, but well, you know, in this case, it depends what you count as a flower. If I'm going to count all these embellishments of textural items like the echinacea and the scabiosa and the crocosmia, I might be, yeah, more leaning towards 2/3 floral and 1/3 greenery, but I did add a lot of greens. I did. Couldn't help myself. But you know, that's also a personal thing. I mean, some people prefer to have their arrangements be heavier on that element of sort of harvested and foraged greens, and then just sort of accentuate with, you know, some really statement floral pieces like dahlias, the cafe au lait dinner plate dahlias that are like bigger than my head. So lovely to do just this abundance of greens and then just do like 3 dahlias nested in your arrangement. It's not something I can do when I send out on deliveries because people are expecting to be floral heavy when they're sending things out, but in your home it could be so lovely just to do that and have the singular impact of just fewer floral and a lot more greenery.
Yeah, that's great. Well, there's so many people on here that are commenting on how incredible and how helpful, great tips. Everyone, I think, really, really enjoyed this. So we are super excited to have you hosting this for us. And we're loving our arrangements that we have at our front desk at the Design Center. So that's been fun for us.
Well, this one's going to come to the Design Center tomorrow.
Oh, yay.
Weekly, just so that anybody who's in the showrooms, if they want to kind of get a little closer and you know, see it in person, they'll get a chance to do that for the next 3 days. And I would love it if any of you are, you know, adventuring out into your garden and putting together something, you know, embellished by things you get at, you know, the market or even Trader Joe's. If you pick up some blooms and you make something, will you send me a picture of your arrangement? I would love, love, love to see, especially if you're doing anything for Thanksgiving. You can just send it to, I don't know, well, Fleurish.com has our email. And I would love to see what you make because I miss having people, you know, having that interaction in person where I'm actually, you know, doing constructive criticism and giving a lot of feedback. So I'd be happy to do that. So
yeah. And we can't wait for that in-person floral shop with you. I know, sometime soon, hopefully, that would be great. But yeah, any last words and let them know email addresses and your email address or your website and all of that, that they get a hold of you.
You want me to share that?
Sure.
Oh, okay. So Fleurish.com, which is FLEU, oh, here, RISH.com. I wear an apron all the time just because I'm so messy and I'm constantly wiping my hands. So that just saves my clothing. So Fleurish.com, you can send an email to info@fleurish.com or Nisha@fleurish.com, and that's N as in Nancy, ISHA. And then our Instagram feed is Flourish Seattle. I have not been active for the last 3 months, but I will eventually go back. I know it's an important, great tool, and I love posting. We love our feed. I just needed to take a little break from that rabbit hole. So, but anyway, I don't know if you guys can see an aerial shot of the bouquet, like, but maybe you'll see it tomorrow at the Design Center if you're there. And thank you. This was super fun.
Thank you so much, Nisha, and we will see you tomorrow when you come to drop off.
Okay, everybody stay well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right, bye, everyone.